So imagine you could take leaders from 200 communities around the country, and you could ask for a commitment to ensure that children are reading on grade level by the end of third grade. And imagine in these 200 plus communities around the country, leaders committed not only to that broad goal, to the very specific solution areas around school readiness, school attendance, and summer learning. What a force for change to work across communities, across states, across the country. This indeed, of course, is what the Campaign for Grade Level Reading is doing. It's an honor really to invite Yolie Flores as our closing speaker today. She is inspirational. Her work is inspirational. I think you'll enjoy her comments today. It's worth noting, as I invite her up here, that she was vice president of the LA Unified School District's Board of Education. And in that capacity then, and now in her capacity as Chief Program Officer for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, has championed the learning of children from low-income communities. So please join me in welcoming Yolie Flores up here.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Matthew. So great to be here with all of you that have had an enormous time here these last few days. It's really, truly an incredible honor to be here at NSLA, to be with you, and to know that I'm with so many kindred spirits working on behalf of children. I feel truly, truly privileged to be with you. I want to start by thanking NSLA, one of the campaign's most important partners. Thank you for that partnership. Thank you for your vision and for your tireless efforts to ensure that children and youth have enriching summers to stay on track and to succeed in school, in college, in career, and in life. But thank you especially for making this year's conference theme so incredibly bold, daring to disrupt. I love it. I love the dare part, and I especially love the disrupt part. I love that we're acknowledging that all is not well for the children of our country. More importantly, I love that those words acknowledge that we must act, which is why we're all here. And I know you're here because you're committed to creating a very different reality for children and for young people, one that rejects the current set of facts about the conditions of too many children in the United States of America. One that rejects that only some kids should have the supports they need to realize their full potential. One that instead believes in excellence and in equity for all kids. You know, like many of you, I've spent my entire career trying to advance an agenda that would give every child in this country, especially our most vulnerable children, an opportunity to reach his or her most highest aspirations. And perhaps, like some of you, I do this work because it is deeply, deeply personal. It's personal not only because of my own experiences, but also because I have a fundamental belief that the opportunity to succeed should never be about an opportunity for just some. But that's what we have in this country, opportunity for some and not all. And we've known that, and we have had plenty of rhetoric about ending this injustice. We've even had major legal victories like Brown versus Board of Education that made us feel hopeful that finally, at least in education, this injustice would end. But it's been 62 years, and our kids are still waiting, and their families are still waiting. They're waiting for us to stop making excuses, to stop blaming, and to start stepping up. They want us to embrace that they too were born brilliant, and that every single one of them, regardless of the color of their skin or where they were born, what language they first spoke, or their family or home circumstances. They want us to believe that they too have the potential to be accomplished and successful human beings. They want us to believe and to invest in their potential, to hold high expectations for them, and to make no excuses for them. But as a nation, we don't believe, and we certainly don't invest equitably. And unfortunately, and I know you've heard this come up before, unfortunately, in this recent presidential campaign, it has become abundantly and dangerously clear, at least for one candidate, that we are a nation for some, but not for all. So truly, we have quite a bit of disrupting to do. At the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, we get this. This is the gospel that we have shared since the campaign launch in 2010, when our director, Ralph Smith, spoke to the nation about a very disturbing truth and an urgent call to action. Let me share with you what he said. He said, "We've raised a concern about the alarming number of children who are not proficient readers by the end of third grade. We have used the data and the research to suggest that this statistic, which is now stagnated someplace in the zone between abysmal and catastrophic, has significant and long-term consequences for these children, for their families, for their communities, and for the nation." It's no exaggeration to say that left unchecked, this particular problem will compromise and will undermine our nation's commitment to ending intergenerational poverty. You can hear the urgency in his words. An alarming number of children, abysmal, catastrophic. Indeed, in 2010, according to NAEP, 80%, wrap your head around this, 80% of low-income children in this country cannot read proficiently by the end of third grade. For African American, Latino children, and other vulnerable children, the data are even worse. Understanding the implications that for children that can't read, it is essentially game over. We know it is the strongest predictor of high school graduation, which sets you on the path for college or career, or in fact, the gateway out of poverty. So it's been this call to action to ensure that more kids from low-income families are reading proficiently by the end of third grade that has led the campaign to grow to now over 285 communities across 42 states in the nation, each putting a stake in the ground around the unacceptable reality that too many children cannot read. We're grateful to each and every one of these communities, including New Britain, Connecticut, and New York City, both of whom were featured here yesterday, and whose work is demonstrating that children and families can succeed when we lead, when we invest, and when we commit to the cause. For me, third grade reading became a priority as I became a member of the school board in LA, that little school district in LA a few years ago. With the launch of the campaign and some coaching from Ralph, I too began looking at the data, and what I found blew my mind. As they say in the legal world, it shocked the conscience. In LA, only 27% of third graders were reading proficiently. And that's not just low-income kids. The entire 700,000 population of children in LA that were in third grade could not read. When we disaggregated the data for low-income kids, it was 20%. For Black and brown kids, it was under 16%. For English learners, 9%. It's no wonder that in many of our schools, in many of our high schools, we had a dropout rate of 60 to 70%. So I simply couldn't wrap my head around this. How could we be failing so many children and not be more outraged? As education leaders, how could we have so much rhetoric and hand-wringing about the dropout rate and yet be doing very little to address the single most powerful predictor of high school graduation? More importantly, how could I look any parent in the eye and confidently say that we were preparing them and preparing their children for the future? You know, the parents of the children in LA are just like the parents of children in any part and every part of the country. They all have dreams for a better life for their children. That's why they work so hard, or why they courageously cross borders, often into a very unwelcoming land, or why they sacrifice so much of themselves. And those dreams start with the prospect that their children will go to school, that they will learn to read, and that they will accomplish what perhaps so many of them could not. And they just trust that their kids will reach this dream and that finally they will be the ones that break the cycle of poverty in their family. This was my family. Both my parents from Mexico with only a 3rd and 6th grade education, spoke only Spanish. They worked in factories and dairies and in agriculture, lived in tough neighborhoods, worked 2 or 3 jobs, and still just made ends meet. But I did reach the dream because I was surrounded with the supports that I needed, including, by the way, the most fabulous summer program in my community, offered by the local social services agency and the most fabulous library. And I had parents that had the inner wisdom, even with such little education. They had the capacity to nurture me, to interact with me in ways that would prepare me for school, and who made sure I was in school every single day. Because of this, and because of the great teachers that I had, I would be the first in my family to graduate from high school, go on to college, and I would break the cycle of poverty. But what I fear today is that that dream is now so out of reach for way too many children that look like me or that come from a similar demographic. Think for a moment about the economy that we now live in, and imagine the kind of life that is in store for children that can't read and that drop out of school. These children will literally have little to no opportunities. In fact, according to the Brookings Institution, even kids that can read and graduate high school will face double the unemployment rate at kids that go to college. What I see is that for the first time in the history of our nation, the dream of low-income and immigrant parents, the dreams that they have for their children, will go unrealized. And this is why this DARE from NSLA is so important. We need to write a very different narrative in our country for children, and I'm convinced that it must start with engaging and supporting parents. We know that parents are their children's first and most important teachers, that they are the architects. They are the architects of their developing brains, the ones that can promote their healthy development, that can create language-rich environments, that can track their babies and their toddlers' developmental milestones, all necessary to start school ready to learn. Parents are the ones that can make sure their little children get to school every day and that learning continues during the summer. And parents are who can most effectively demand better schools and supports for their children. In my view, parents are the rocket fuel for the movement that is needed. So NSLA, I take on your dare. I take on your dare to disrupt the notion that only those of us in this room and others like us, that only us can change the course for all children to reach their aspirations. I dare us to begin looking as parents as our allies in our commitment to excellence and to equity. In fact, I dare us to believe that parents are more powerful than we are in this work. I dare us to recognize that in our field, there is way too much blame, way too much judgment, and ambivalence, particularly for poor and low-income parents. I dare us to conduct an honest assessment of our own institutions and eradicate the biases we may unconsciously hold. And then, I dare us to acknowledge that parents love their children more than we do. I dare us to let families guide us in determining our organizational agendas. I dare us to invest in professional development and training to help us know how to authentically support parents. And I dare us to invest in equipping parents with the tools, the knowledge, the information they need to be powerful consumers and advocates on behalf of their children. I dare us, in fact, I double dare us, to share power with families. Whether you take my dares or any other dare to disrupt the current landscape of opportunity for some, but not for all, what I know is that we will have fulfilled our obligations as citizens of this world. And with that, I want to leave you with this short quote from Gioconda Belli, the acclaimed Nicaraguan writer and central figure in the Sandinista Revolution. It's called Dare to Change the World. And quote, "There is nothing chaotic or romantic in wanting to change the world. It is possible. It is the age-old vocation of all of humanity. I can't think of a better life than one dedicated to passion, to dreams, to the stubbornness that defies chaos and disillusionment. So go change the world. I dare you." Thank you.